Hey guys, welcome back. It is Mossy from Pro Gamer Academy here to talk today about MSI 2021. Obviously, you guys can see the VOD here. We can see our two finalists is Damwon Gaming against Royal Never Give Up. And this series was an absolute banger. Now, last time we left off, I wasn't entirely sure who would make it into the finals. I was really hoping that Mad Lions would bring it through. And if you guys didn't actually check out that series, I would really implore you to go back, watch the replay, and honestly just watch all of the games. It was really interesting to see how Damwon adapted throughout the series. I thought that Mad Lions kind of came out strong there. Seemed like they kind of had Damwon on the back foot, and then things obviously changed. I mean, Damwon took game one, and then it felt like Mad Lions kind of adapted a little bit. We got to see a Xayah pick, which I was really excited about, given that I'm kind of a big fan of that champion. But obviously, Damwon were able to take games 4 and 5, so they advanced to the final, and then they played RNG. Now, if you guys didn't watch the series as well, I must tell you guys to watch this. This first game here that we're seeing on the replay was an absolute banger. It was like 39 minutes. We saw like all these elders being taken. Baron got taken a bunch of times. It was really like the perfect example of two teams that felt quite evenly matched throughout the series. I will say, even though there was some games, especially Game 5 felt like a bit of a stomp. There were some games like that in this series that felt really one-sided. It was clear that these two teams, like, neither team really had the other one's number, if you know what I mean. These two teams, obviously, I think after this series, have a better idea of how the other one wants to play, but you know, we have the summer split coming up, and then we're going to have Worlds, so there's a lot of time for the patch to change and whatever else. But I do think, like, the next two times that, the next time that Damwon and RNG meet, I think that we're going to get an even better series, because it really is a progression between these two teams. Obviously, that's assuming that these two teams were able to keep up their standard of play and make it out of the regions, but given the players that they have, given the talent, and given like the coaching staff, sort of the systems and the culture of these two organizations, I'd be very surprised if we don't see these two teams again, back again representing their country at Worlds. So to go a little more in depth into the series, obviously, like I was saying, Game 1 felt just sort of extremely back and forth, and it is important to note that we start to see sort of this meta developing. If you look at the two jungle picks throughout this entire series, you can see RNG just had Wei on the Udyr every single game, and it pretty much went unbanned and like uncontested. The same thing goes with Kai'Sa. We saw Gala on the Kai'Sa every single game. I maybe would have liked to see a little bit more like interesting kind of bans, or like, you know, like you're playing in a 5-game series, and it's interesting to me that Damwon didn't really experiment that much in terms of messing with the enemies draft. You know, they had Showmaker on a lot of different champions this series. On Damwon, you know, he played Akali, he played Xerath, he played Syndra, he played Renekton, he played Jace. So obviously a lot of different champions there. But at the same time, when your opponent is picking, you know, Udyr and Kai'Sa a bunch of games in this series, they also picked Gragas 3 times that more or less went uncontested, and then actually the champion I think that we saw the most priority on was Leona, because the first 2 games Damwon had Leona, and then the next 3 games RNG had Leona. So it was really interesting for me to see kind of the progression in the priority of the picks, what the teams were considering strong, you know, later in the series. I mean, it was like this consistent sort of pool of champions that all do semi, like, what's the way to put it? They do semi-similar things. So, you know, the first 2 games you had RNG taking the Nautilus and taking the Rel as their support. Both those supports obviously work very well with the Kai'Sa. It's important to note that Damwon opened their first 2 games with the Tristana pick, and actually I want to talk about the Tristana pick a little bit more later, because I think that they utilized it very well. Ghost played it extremely well, and I was curious to see that they didn't actually they didn't end up going back to it for Game 5, which was a little interesting, but we can talk about that later. So yeah, the priority on the support picks was fascinating to me because even though like you've seen this champion Rel who's gone through so many iterations, so many nerfs, she's still a very high priority in terms of the current like acceptable meta for both of these teams. Rel was actually picked in both games 2 and 4, so this champion like was super strong engaged. Even though like she's sort of been nerfed conceptually, I think that the pros understand that she's very strong. And then obviously the game 5 draft, we had this like weird kind of Varus Tom Kench bot lane. It was honestly a really odd look from Damwon for me. It seemed like they tried to kind of experiment and get out of the box, and it feels like they departed a little bit from what was working for them. Because the Varus pick and the Tom Kench pick were both sort of unprecedented, and I was thinking maybe it's their idea of what works against the Kaisa and what works against the Leona, because obviously that was the bot lane that they had seen 2 games prior, and they were just going to keep picking it on RNG, but they were sort of unable to adapt. I will say that throughout the tournament, I was mostly unimpressed with the gameplay from Ghost and Beryl, especially Beryl. I think Beryl took a lot of sort of flack throughout the series. There's one misplay that we're going to see in the replay in game 5, I think it was, where he's playing the Tom Kench, and it seems like he could have made a much better play to try and save his ADC, and ends up kind of blundering. It really felt that he had a lot of kind of uncharacteristically like common errors that he was sort of making. Beryl, obviously, you know, a world-class player, but when it came down to this best of 5, it felt like Ming was just sort of more consistent. You know, his engages were great, his roams were fantastic, so there's just, it felt like he was making more opportunities sort of in that support role. That being said, I do think that if you look at the standout games from his laning counterpart, Ghost, if we're talking about Beryl, I think that Ghost actually had, like, obviously he has these 2 standout moments, right? Like he has in game 2, I think it's the quadra kill on Tristana, and then he actually had the pentakill in game 5. But I do think that he navigated those games just extremely well in general. It felt like I'm really unsure as to why they went back to like this Varus pick. Like I can understand trying the Jinx Thresh thing. I think it made sense given the context. Like it was a good idea to try and sort of problem solve and to navigate the game against this like Kaisa Leona bot lane. But yeah, the idea clearly just didn't pan out for them in game 5, and I really do feel like that's a large portion of why they lost. If we want to talk about the jungle matchup, I'll say that I think Canyon, well, let me just say, for Damwon, I think Canyon and Showmaker probably play the most consistently during this tournament. I almost feel like I never saw them making mistakes, like maybe a couple ones here and there, but compared to some of the more obvious mistakes maybe coming from the bot lane, or, you know, simple misplays coming from top lane once in a while, I thought they played very, very consistently. And I think if we want to talk about the jungle matchup, the fact that, you know, you start this series, you pick Morgana like 3 times in a row, I was kind of happy to see them in game 4 and in game 5 giving Canyon some of these other picks. Obviously, he was able to get his hands on the Rumble in game 5, and I felt like he was mostly making the right decisions, but he just wasn't able to get enough done. That being said, the Nidalee was a very interesting pick in game 4, and I mean, obviously they're able to get the win there. So I think he did a great job making opportunities for them on that Nidalee. Just to finish up the whole ideas on drafting and whatnot, if you guys actually go to the MSI champion statistics on Lolpedia, you can see that the Udyr had the highest like pick ban rate with a 95.1% pick ban rate, and then Kai'Sa's like just under him, just a couple more, with 90.1%. So I think like the priority on these champions, I just don't understand why Damwon didn't sort of try harder to take them out and to sort of throw their opponents off comfort. You know, going back just a little bit to like the Varus idea, like Varus obviously also a super high pick ban rate thing, but I think in the vacuum of like maybe the champion is super strong and maybe things had worked differently in scrims or in previous matches, I think some of that stuff has to go out the door when you're playing a 5-game series. You have to try and adapt to what your opponent is doing, right? Like you have to say, hey, what are they picking every single game? What is comfortable for them? And then try and make the adjustment sort of, you know, and maybe that comes down to a drafter problem, or maybe it's a team mentality problem. But it, like, this series felt to me like Damwon, you know, like, they struggled a little bit. Like game one was definitely back and forth, but they don't take it, and then um, they're able to take a couple more wins in the series. But it just feels to me like they were sort of at the end here beating their heads against a wall. I mean, these teams were trading blows back and forth, but it really felt like RNG learned more throughout the series and was able to adapt better to what Damwon wanted to do. One other thing I did want to talk about with the jungle specifically and with the Rumble is that there is like a growing sort of discourse throughout the community, or maybe not discourse, but there's definitely a conversation starting about this Rumble champion because if you look at the priority, obviously Rumble was one of these very sort of high priority champions, at least at the start of the tournament. I mean, he's down there with a 75.3% like pick ban rate. So Rumble, obviously a ton of priority put on him, but people are really going back, and I would implore you guys to kind of check this stuff out as well. Like, is Rumble supposed to kind of be a jungler? Like, obviously he has an insane clear. Obviously, Riot probably overtuned him a little bit, but the amount of priority that he had in a jungler the amount of priority he had as a jungler compared to his success rate might be a number that these teams should sort of look at more. Obviously, Canyon was sort of one of the more successful Rumble players, but Rumble ended up, escaping this tournament with a 48.6% win rate, which doesn't tell the whole story. Obviously, there's a lot of priority on him, but it does sort of make you wonder if teams are using him effectively. One other stat that, I'm just looking down the line here, I thought was extremely interesting to note was that the Senna was banned 45 times and it was picked 3 times, and it has a 100% win rate over those 3 games. So maybe people should have been putting more priority on the Senna, I guess. I'm not sure exactly the reason why the stat is so crazy, but yeah, just the statistics on these tournaments can sort of tell you a lot. Either way, I think that I'm definitely looking forward to the next international event. I think both these teams played well, and yeah, I guess I'll see you guys next week for a video regarding the start of the NALCS Summer Split. Take it easy.